Jacqueline Harris, Masters of Social Work, is a producer and talk show host of I Have a Dream Too, Empowering You. She is also the founder and CEO of a nonprofit organization called I Have a Dream Too, Inc. I had to, just ask me. Jacqueline is an entrepreneur, empowerment coach, motivational speaker, and visionary. She believes that all people can redefine their purpose, their place, and their possibilities through determination, persistence, and tenacity. Jacqueline has begun to crystallize her goals. Without difficulty, she continues to make plans daily to achieve all possibilities. With her supreme confidence, determination, and disregard for obstacles and other people's criticisms, she will carry out her plans. Why? I have a dream too. Jacqueline knows she can dream anything that she wants to dream. That's the beauty of the human mind. Jacqueline can do anything she wants to do. That is the strength of the human will. Most importantly, Jacqueline trusts herself to test all limits. This will be Jacqueline's courage to succeed. Come join me on this journey of empowerment because you have a dream too.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my show, I Have a Dream Too, Empowering You, where we are on a mission to redefine your purpose, your place, your possibilities. And so tonight, I have sitting with me Dr. Wiffred Farquharson IV. He is a clinical psychologist. And welcome, Dr. Farquharson. How are you today?
Thank you, Jackie. I'm
Great.
well. How are you?
Great. And we will also be having someone come on the phone, Queen Afi Gaston. She's Executive Director of Domestic Violence Wears Many Tags. This is going to be a very powerful show, and it is going to be a very sensitive one as well, because we know that domestic violence is not often reported, and we're here to be able to empower every individual, someone who may be involved in a situation, who may need help, and we're hoping to be able to give them the tools that are necessary to help strengthen them, give them the courage, but also want to be able to say, after the labels have been removed, is I have a dream too. And just ask me. So we want to be able to just talk a little bit with Dr. Farquharson as a clinical psychologist. And, you know, Dr. Farquharson, in terms of your views of domestic violence,
Right.
What are some things that you've been seeing? Give me some overview on that.
Well, I have worked with a few women that are survivors of domestic violence in various situations and various, and in some cases, multiple stages of their lives. And you find that it does have significant implications. It impacts their lives socially, emotionally, mentally. Of course, there are some physical aspects if you're discussing physical abuse or sexual abuse. It can impact multiple facets of one's life.
Okay.
Right.
Right. And so we talk about domestic violence and how it affects, you have survivors, women that are survivors, but we also know that it affects the entire family. Right. So let's talk about that a little bit in terms of just that those traumatic experiences that children are subjected to.
Absolutely. So, right, it's not just those that are actually the subjects of the abuse, but those that are witnesses or in the environment heavily impacted. And so when you speak about children and their surroundings, and even when we discuss them on a physiological level and the fact that their brains are not fully developed until, you know, well into their adolescent years, it can have strong impacts as to how they view the world, their worldview.
Is this something that I heard that the trauma alters the brain by the age of 10?
Absolutely.
It is something about that, yes.
Absolutely. So the brain starts to form, and we know our moral compass and our worldview in the way that when we're 10 years old, my parents used to always say, all right, now you know right from wrong.
Right.
So, but what our children can be exposed to really shapes that. So if they're seeing violence, if they're witnesses to violence, or they're subjects or survivors of violence, the way that they view love, the way that they view interactions and social relationships, and how people treat people is warped. Due to that experience and exposure to trauma.
Right. I did read something about adverse childhood experiences, and that's that childhood adversities where children from 18 years and younger become exposed to the adversity. How does that impact them?
Well, the childhood experiences, the ACEs study, it's found that when a child has more than one adverse experiences.
Such as?
Such as we're talking about extensive verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, or it could be, even single-parent homes, poverty, those types of adverse experiences. They have a difficult time adjusting.
Right.
And as they develop, and again, into young adults, and then, of course, into adulthood, it makes it a little bit more complicated for them.
Right.
To see the world in specific ways.
Okay. And so we have Miss Queen Afi Gaston, who's joining us tonight. As I said, she's Executive Director of Domestic Violence Wears Many Tags, and she's going to be on the phone with us. And we do this show live, and so we had some Skyping issues right now, but we're going to take her call in now. Good evening, Miss Queen Afi Gaston.
Peace and love. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course, of course. I reached out to you because I felt it was important that we have a conversation about domestic violence. And I like the way your program is, it wears many tags. And so we know that you're a motivational speaker, you're a visionary, you're a mental health professional, but we also know that you're a survivor. And so tell me a little bit about your organization and how this all came about.
Well, it came about, as you said, I'm Queen Fee, the founder of Domestic Violence Wears Many Tags organization, based here in the DMV, but we have our talk show too, and we're speaking to people all over the world. But it came about approximately 5 years ago. I started the organization because I'm a victim as well as an abuser of domestic violence. So I really wanted to put out education on both sides, whether it's women, men, whether it's a woman or a man, as well as include the teens in this conversation, because I'm noticing that a lot of teens are victims as well as abusers. So it was very important for me to set up an organization that would educate from both sides of abuse.
Okay. And yes, we have also here Dr. Wiffred Farquharson the fourth, and he's a clinical psychologist where he is sharing his perspective on domestic violence. And we were just having a conversation about what we see is happening to our children. And as you said, it affects the whole family. We know that one out of every 4 women have experienced some sort of domestic violence. So when we talk about it wears many tags, what are those tags?
Those tags are verbal, number 1 being verbal. Let me stress that. Number 1 being verbal abuse.
Okay.
Physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, as well as sexual abuse is associated with domestic violence.
Right.
Some people want to say that spiritual abuse is associated with domestic violence. Well, I beg to differ because in my relationship, I prayed at the time that when I held that gun to my son's father, I prayed that it went off. So in your relationships, whether you are the abuser or the victim, you can pray. Nobody can hinder your prayer life. That's a personal relationship with you and your higher power.
Right.
So there's a lot of research to support that spiritual abuse comes from a spiritual environment versus the home.
Yes. And so your program sets out to do so many things, and you talked about workshops and things of that nature. Can you go in a little bit about those?
Yeah. So my program, we have services to work with victims and abusers on a one-on-one basis, as well as group support, as well as anonymous calls that victims and abusers can make to get help, get DV education, as well as speaking out, going into the various school systems to bring education, and let me stress that too, education on domestic violence and the many tags that it wears.
And that's just so important because education is about awareness. When you agree,
right.
Dr. Farquharson,
Absolutely.
that being aware of verbal abuse, whereby someone may say, well, it's not really being verbally abusive, but when you're being verbally abused, what does that really look like? For people
So
who are
if you-
listening out
Yeah.
there, sorry, for people who are listening or watching, that what does that verbal abuse consist of?
verbal abuse look like? Of course, we said again, it can wear many tags. So first of all, it could be a woman, it could be a man, it could be a teen. You know, we have some babies around here learning verbal abuse. I wonder why. But verbal abuse is attack from an abusive behavior involving the use of language. There's some that also involve non-communication, but you have your gestures, your body language, your hand movement. All of those things can symbol that maybe you're being in an uncomfortable setting in terms of verbal abuse. It is a form of profanity that can occur with or without the use of expletive, while oral communication is the most common form, but verbal abuse may be expressed in the form of written words as well. So you have the text messaging, email, and so forth and so on.
Right. And so when we talk about the verbal abuse, and we know that there are, you know, as it wears many tags, you mentioned men are abused as well. And we kind of forget that we relate domestic violence to women. And so we look at men that are abused or are victims themselves. What have you seen in that? If you could share some information on that.
Oh, goodness. And the men that I've worked with, and we had the pleasure last night of being on stage with Iyanna Van Zant last night, and she did a session called Behind My Closed Doors. And the brokenness, the boldness speakers that I work with are men that are victims as well as men that are abusers. And I supplied the speakers last night, and one of those speakers was a victim of domestic violence. He was being abused verbally, which is there's, you know, the language of you're no good, you know, you will never be anything, you know, all of the cuss words that we can put inside of that on a constant basis. This is happening on a constant basis. And with him, in his case, it grew from the verbal piece to the physical, to this young lady actually throwing ammonia, I think he said ammonia or something like that, in his face.
Wow.
So it starts off verbal for men, and, you know, there's some mothers that touch their womb and say, this little so-and-so better not come out of me crying.
Right.
You know, we touch the womb, and men are abused in the womb. And then when they get out here, it just gets worse. It
Right.
starts off at home. It escalates. And so some men are susceptible to women that display that behavior, display the abusive behavior, display the verbal piece,
Right. Right.
display the physical piece.
Mhm.
So it looks like that for men as well as for women.
Right. And I know, as I said earlier, Dr. Farquharson and I were having a conversation about adverse childhood experiences, and we understand now that many of those same men were exposed to those type of adversities where there was domestic violence in the home, or there was, you know, drug and alcohol, imprisonment of a parent, divorce. All of those things are considered adversities. And so when they get older, as a matter of fact, that they tend to go towards those type of people with whom they were raised in or conditioned by, I would say.
Right.
But
Yeah.
Dr. Farquharson, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and just to speak to your point, that I haven't met someone that's been an abuser or a perpetrator of some type of trauma to someone else. I haven't met anyone that would suit that category that hasn't been hurt themselves.
Right.
And not to say that I've met everybody in the world, so let's not quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure that when we say the phrase hurt people,
Yes.
it's very accurate.
Right.
And you know, we're speaking about the many different types of abuse and even the emotional abuse, right? And so that would be when someone exposes the infirmities of someone else's emotions and mind,
Right.
So knowing that someone is quite anxious, and then as Queen had said, the standing over them in a threatening manner,
Right.
to make sure to expose that they're anxious, that they're an anxious person, or, you know, isolating someone that's depressed, right? That's a form of emotional abuse, and then not giving them access to their needs, right?
Right.
We have a hierarchy of needs, as Maslow has stated, and we have the physiological needs,
Right.
which is your food and water and clothing and shelter. But, feeling connected, feeling like you belong to someone is a huge importance
Right.
to any human and actually any animal, right? So
Right.
we know that most animals flock together and they move as a unit. It wouldn't be any different from humans.
Sure.
And so when we alienate people intentionally, and this goes on to even the bullying that we see in schools and in the workplace and things of that nature, it's all abuse.
Right.
And it all has implications, and so it's not, when people say, and then people often will say, well, I'm not abusing you, I haven't put my
Correct.
hands on you.
Right.
You have everything you need, I haven't, physically you're fine, cut it out. No, you could be abusing someone. It
And-
may
and-
not be illegal, but
Right.
it certainly is
Exactly.
unsafe.
And that's the lack of education and awareness that we need to do from kindergarten on up, okay, to understand what that verbal abuse looks like. So like I said, this is a very sensitive topic, but it can be very powerful and empowering for a lot of people to get that greater understanding. So we're going to take a break right now. And Ms. Queen, if you could just hold on. But we're going to take a break right now. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. Tom Dow. We have a multidisciplinary practice in Melville and Ronkonkoma, New York, and we treat patients with many, many different conditions, from newborns through geriatric patients with numerous different techniques. There's a technique and a type of treatment for every class of patient. We have them all here. Here's my son Thomas, also a doctor of chiropractic, working on one of our patients' cervical spine. This patient has had chronic neck pain for many, many, many years, has been to a multitude of different practitioners with little or no response. And with our specialized techniques, she has improved tremendously and continues to improve on a daily basis. We have two practices, one in Melville and one in Ronkonkoma, New York. We are a multidiscipline chiropractic office. What that means is we have chiropractors, massage therapists, acupuncturists, psychologists, all working as a team and a network of outside professionals such as orthopedists and neurologists that we work hand in hand with to help determine what your injuries are and the best way to treat your injuries. I have the great pleasure of having my son in practice with me. We work hand in hand, father and son, to give our patients the best care possible, and a staff which is loving, caring, and you'll never have to wait at all in our office for service. Many times patients come into our office and they have what's called a soft tissue injury. Soft tissue injuries are like scars inside your body. If you've ever been cut on the outside of your body, you get a scar. The same thing happens inside of your body to your muscles and ligaments. So our job is to determine where those are, stretch the muscles, adjust the vertebra back into their correct position, and then refortify the normal structure with exercise. That's what we do best, and I hope someday you'll come see us at one of our two offices. Thank you.
Welcome back to I Have a Dream 2, Empowering You. And here tonight I have special guest Dr. Wiffred Farquharson IV. He's a clinical psychologist giving his perspective on domestic violence. And on the phone this evening, we have Queen Afi Gaston. She's executive director of Domestic Violence Wears Many Tags. So we were just talking about verbal abuse and what that looks like and how important it is that we really get the word out about the education, the awareness that as many people or children or young adults have a misunderstanding that, you know what, I'm not really being verbally abused. That's not verbal abuse. He's not hitting me or she's not hitting me. So we really need to do that. But Ms. Queen, what are some other things in terms of your program? I know you have a TV talk radio. If you talk a little bit about that.
Yes, we have the talk show again, which we do Brokenness to Boldness, which focuses on survivors, the survivor story, because the survivor story is very important in terms of encouraging current victims, current abusers to reach out and get help, and that they don't have to stay in an abusive relationship. So we try to do that show for them, as well as we have the abuser side talk show, which, heck, nobody is talking about that side, but Queen is.
Okay, Queen is, okay. The Queen is talking about the abuser side. And so you've had abusers that have come on and shared their story, and I think that's excellent to be able to bring them forth, but also them taking that, get into that circle of courage. To come forth and say, you know what, I'm an abuser, but I need help and I want to change or redefine myself. So what does that actually look like in terms of working with an abuser?
It looks like myself right now.
Okay. Well, we can't see you, but so, you know.
There's so many warning signs of an abusive personality.
Okay.
And one of the things that really stick out in that behavior is that abusers lead with an ego. And a lot of times people say, it's no excuse. Were you looking to be justified in your behavior? Abusers are not thinking about, we don't think about whether it's an excuse. We don't think about whether we're justified in our behavior. That's the furthest thing from our mind when we have that ego behavior. We're thinking about, is our way or the highway?
Yes. And we see that in so many relationships where the man has that ego thing going on, but the woman is oblivious to that is really considered abuse, and it falls under domestic violence. So I'm just going to ask Dr. Wiffred Farquharson, when you've talked about dealing with abusers and so forth, what is, when you talk about the ego, let's give you a clinical perspective on that.
Right. Well, I mean, we all know the male ego is a alive and well concept, but I'm also going to go back to the part about hurt people.
Yes.
Right. And so then I would connect that ego to an insecurity.
Yes.
Okay. So then, you know, if there is an abuser, that means that the abuser is somehow trying to fulfill a void. And that's how I would look at it from a clinical perspective. Because it's easy to say, stop it, right? But, you know, that's one way to say stop it. And then, of course, there's coping skills and find an alternative way to express your emotions so that you're not harmful to the people that you care about and the people that care about you. That's the first layer of it. But if you really want to get into an abuser's head and I think make change, you have to really figure out the function of that behavior. And the function of that behavior can be, now everybody's different,
Right.
but I would say that it can be, in a strong sense, the insecurity playing out. And I'm going to make you feel lower so that I can feel higher, because somehow or another, my needs are not getting met.
Right.
I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel loved. I don't feel empowered.
Right.
And that's what we're here to talk about in
Right.
the grand scheme of things. So how else can we empower you without you having to beat someone up?
Right. And that's the power that they get
Right.
from all of their loss, their neglect, those childhood adversities that, you know, from 18 years and younger. So now I'm in this relationship where I can have control when, as a child, that particular abuser didn't have any control. Everything.
Well, not only that,
Okay.
let me stop you there. I didn't learn anything else.
Right.
In my household, this is all that I learned.
Yes.
Nothing else was displayed to me.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm a victim before I'm an abuser.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And right, you're right. You're a victim before you become an abuser, and it becomes learned behavior.
Basically.
Yeah, it's learned behavior. What are some things that, in terms of success stories in dealing with abusers?
Well, the success stories is that we begin to work in an educational standpoint in terms of educating the Amygdala to really reason what abuse is, and that learning those very fine tools of understanding what's going on, and knowing how to respond to what's going on. So it's really a reprogramming process to get the amygdala to reason the behavior and then know how to respond.
Right, and that goes back to what my show is about, is redefining your purpose, your place, your possibilities. And although we all make mistakes, okay, it's only best when we learn from them, that we no longer want to carry those labels, those issues, those concerns, feelings of loss and helplessness and so forth. But this is what the show is about, to bring people as a community. As you're in Washington, D.C., and you mentioned DMV. When I first heard it, I thought it was Department of Motor Vehicles, but we now know it's Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. And so you're covering
D.C., Maryland, and Virginia.
Right, D.C., okay. And, you're covering a vast majority of area, you know, and so being on the show and giving your information, your story, okay, we are hoping that as this streams out all over the world, that someone is listening and will feel empowered by, you know what, they just got some education and some awareness this evening, and that they will reach out to you, okay, and being able to, feel the need to be uplifted by all of this, that you no longer have to remain in a domestic violence situation. It does not have to consist of hitting. But it can consist of that verbal abuse. Ms. Queen, where can people find you?
You definitely can find me on Facebook, QUEENAFI, all one word, Queen of Thieves. And certainly if people want to reach out from Long Island, you can, 202-821-8933. I'd like to remain reachable for the community to be able to contact me directly.
Yes. Okay, and that's your direct number.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So what are some other things that you're doing as it relates to domestic violence in terms of your workshop, your community forums? What are some other things that you can talk about? I know that you're connected to a church as well.
Yeah, well, certainly we have connected with a church that wanted to have a domestic violence program stationed there for their members and that community that is there, for people to be able to get the help that they need in terms of domestic violence, and everybody coming to that dinner table and learning how to express their emotions in a healthier way.
Right.
Because it's not what you say,
Right.
it's how you say it.
It's how you say it, yes.
So teaching people how to have that effective communication instead of some of the communication that we have, which is verbal abuse.
Right.
And that entails, again, having the conversation about the hard topics.
Yes.
We can no longer close the door. Mm-hmm. We have to talk about the hard topics that we face in our life, as well as, some of the things that our youth are facing right now.
Yes.
And this particular church is not afraid to have that conversation.
Well, that's excellent, because I was going to ask you, how receptive is the church bringing that very sensitive topic, that tough topic to talk about, because no one wants to say, oh my gosh, I'm in a verbal abuse situation. I'm going to come every Sunday, but I'm not going to say anything. You know what I mean? So it's great that that particular church is open and receptive to it, but we got to get a lot of more churches open to that as well.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's a whole nother job in itself.
Oh yeah, when you deal with the spiritual side and you put religion and this information into place, you definitely gonna find something that's rocking and rolling up in there. Okay,
Yeah.
and so that's good. So I know, sadly enough, that a lot of domestic violence goes unreported,
Yeah.
and for fear, for many factors and so forth. And we know that between the ages for women, between the ages of 20 and 24, that they would have already experienced some sort of domestic violence.
Yeah.
Dr. Farquharson, let me just ask you in terms of, women and victims that you do counsel, what are some things that they have expressed as to why? It's really not why, but what kept them in that domestic situation?
Well, I think the Queen Afi touched on something earlier when she referenced the learned behavior and the environment. And so from a clinical perspective, we have the term trauma reenactment.
Yes.
Which means that we tend to put ourselves in situations that we've been exposed to, not necessarily where we're comfortable, but what we know as what is love, right? So unfortunately, if we've been exposed to domestic abuse by, per se, our father, right? And so a young girl has been abused by her father. She will then seek out a partner later in life who is abusive. And maybe not seek out is the right word, but will end up in that same system.
Right.
And so when we're talking about how to move away from that, it's really, instead of doing the trauma reenactment, we need to do the trauma rescripting and say, I'm going to do this differently. I don't think, and then, and some people, and everybody tends to think that the person that they're with, the person that they love, the person that they're spending time with can change, will change. I do know that, again, it does affect both men and women as far as being abused, but we know that women tend to be nurturers and tend to want to help people and tend to want to change people. So it's almost to say, all right, I'm going to keep quiet about this, right? And we're going to work through this, and I can do this, and I can change this situation. And in some cases, it does happen, right? But we also know that in a lot of those situations, people need help from the outside. Yes. There's a lot of things that go on inside of a home that people try to keep quiet and in private that need an external intervention, that need church leaders, that need community leaders, that need other family members, that just sometimes need, of course, I'm going to put my plug, a counselor, right? People need someone outside that can give them an outside perspective, not to tell you what to do, but to guide you in making the right decisions for yourself. And that's what counseling is. It's not someone where you just go and get advice, because if you just needed advice, you kind of know what to do. You kind of know what decisions you need to make, but sometimes we need someone to guide us in the right direction, someone to give us the other side of things, to let them know that this isn't what your life has to be. And that's where you would go find a therapist that can help you with that.
Right, and we're going to come back and talk about counseling and so forth, but we're going to take a little break right now. And also, I just want to say that we're getting a number of calls in, and because Ms. Queen is on the phone right now, if you can give us to maybe the last 5 minutes of the show, call back, we'll be able to take your questions. And sorry for the inconvenience you've been calling in. But we'll take a little break right now and be right back. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Robert Brevard. I'm here for Multi-Medicine in Westbury, New York. We're located at 1065 Old Country Road, Suite 214. Been here for about 15 years. The practice has medical doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists. We also do pain management, and we have orthopedists on staff. Here at Advanced Multi-Medicine Rehabilitation, we've got physical therapists on staff who treat an array of conditions, from neck pain to back pain, shoulder pain. We treat carpal tunnel. We treat a lot of car accident patients, slip and falls. We treat patients with knee injuries, with ankle injuries. We have state-of-the-art equipment. We've been here for over 15 years. Vast array of diagnostic testing, from x-rays to EMGs. What is an EMG? It's a diagnostic test that allows a doctor to determine where the pinched nerve is. Cora is a physical therapist at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. She's working on Stephanie, who was involved recently in an automobile accident. Stephanie has tight thoracic and cervical musculature, and Cora is doing some myofascial release work and some therapeutic stretching, doing it to help her with her pain. Vicky is also a patient here at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. Vicky is now working her leg muscles, specifically her quadricep muscles, trying to strengthen them after an injury she sustained. If you find yourself in need of any type of physical therapy, please don't hesitate to call Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation, located in Westbury, New York, in Suite 214. Phone number is 516-334-7000, or find us on our website at advancedmultimedicine.com.
Welcome back to I Have a Dream Too, Empowering You, and we're having such a very powerful conversation, an issue that needs to be shared and around the world, around the country, the issue of domestic violence and how it wears many tags. Again, we have Dr. Farquharson here, who's given his clinical perspective, and then again on the phone we have Ms. Queen Afi-Gaston, who is the Executive Director of Domestic Violence Wears Many Tags. So we were just talking about counseling, and we know sometimes in our community it's not something that we tend to reach out to. And talk about that a little bit, Dr. Farquharson.
Right, absolutely. I think that counseling, of course, I'm a psychologist, so I'm going to say that counseling is probably one of the best ways to address an issue of violence or domestic violence or abuse in the home, in the school, or in the workplace. And so a few things about counseling that I want to kind of clear up, because people tend to think that, first off, not everybody that goes to counseling is crazy, right? It does not mean that you are crazy. It does not mean that there is anything wrong with you. I think in everybody's life, there's going to be a time where you're going to need some extra support, right? We have friends, we have family, and they're wonderful people. But the only thing about friends and family is that they tend to tell us what we should do.
Right.
And they tend to tell us what they would do.
Right.
And that's not always necessarily the case, because what works for me won't work for my brother, right? And what's worked for my father 25 years ago is not going to work for me. And all well-meaning, and then a lot of times, and most often than not, the things that are impacting my life are impacting my brothers. The things that are impacting my life are somehow impacting my friends. So it's hard for them to give clear, unbiased opinions and perspectives. That's what the benefit of going to counseling is. Then you couple that with some training, right? So for someone that's been involved or is involved in an abusive situation, there's approaches of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes.
And there's trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy that can help one in those situations. Someone that can sit down with you and, one, develop coping skills and ways to manage situations of stress. Two, kind of have you process the trauma that you're going through. Three, then you'll have someone that'll be able to give you some insight as to why your behavior is a certain way.
Right.
And that's where the gold magic happens. That's where you want to be, where you can look at your behaviors, see what feelings you have behind them, see what thoughts you have behind them, and really distinguish between those three. So the emotions, the thoughts, and the behaviors. When you can start to be so insightful and aware of yourself, that's when you've really hit the magic. And that's where you want to be as an abuser. That's where you want to be as a survivor of abuse.
Right, okay. I just want to also say, earlier I mentioned, this is live TV, and we had a little technical difficulty. We couldn't get Ms. Queen on for Skype, so we have her on the phone, and we know that a lot of people are calling into the show. We want to apologize that you're not able to get in, but I do want you to be able to call back, perhaps maybe 5 to 7 minutes before the show closes down. We want to be able to hear from people. If you have questions that you want to put out to the Queen or Dr. Farquharson, feel free to call back a few minutes before the show closes. We don't want to leave anybody out. But we do hear the phone ringing, as it is now, okay? And we can't switch over because we have the Queen on the line. So Ms. Queen, let's just go into some other things in terms of domestic violence, some things that you want to share, again, with with everyone in regards to domestic violence wears many tags.
And let me just say, I'm trying to call the Skype and nobody's picking up. It just keeps saying no answer.
Okay, so we'll move when we get to our next break. We'll work on that piece of it. So, what are some other things in terms of domestic violence wears many tags? What can you talk about? Mm-hmm.
I will say this, that what I want the communities around the world to know, that domestic violence wears many tags, and that we don't include men and teens in this conversation a lot. We need to include men. There's no way in the world that men talk to me and say, I called the 1-800 number for domestic violence, and they told me they didn't have any resources for me as a man.
Right.
There is no way in the world that America should be so biased to men as it pertains to domestic
That's
violence.
right. That's right.
And them being victims and needing the help. Now, as myself, there's no help for me as an abuser.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? As a woman that abused men, there's no help for me. There's no resources for me. There's jail for me.
Right. That's true.
And when I go to jail, when I was locked up, when Queen was locked up, I was sitting in the jail cell thinking about ways when I'm going to get out so I can get to my victim.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't locking me up didn't change my behavior. It still didn't help me identify with my behavior at the end of the day.
Right. And you know what? I thank you so much, Ms. Queen, for keeping it real and talking about your story as an abuser yourself, how you experienced, those trials and tribulations, but how important it was for you to be able to empower others through your strength and your courage. A lot of people are not going to tell the story. A lot of people are not going to admit to, oh, my God, I'm a victim, I'm a survivor, I'm an abuser. And that's, again, I just can't emphasize enough that, the whole purpose of this is to be able to allow people to create that awareness and be able to say, just like you did, that, I got to do something else. I got to redefine my purpose, and as you said, you were a victim first before you were an abuser. And
so
this,
when I was going, you said redefine your purpose.
yes.
I didn't have a purpose.
There you go.
As a victim, as an abuser, I didn't have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose was not on my mind. I didn't care about a purpose. Purpose came way later on.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose came when I said to myself at 30 years old, and I'm 39 now, that I want to live.
Right.
That's when I discovered my purpose. But all while I'm in this abusive relationship, being the victim and the abuser in these relationships, there was no purpose lined up for me that I could see.
Right. And you know what? That's just so real because, by doing this show is about helping people to find their purpose. Where is that purpose going to be? Is it going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Is it going to be a week from now? And if much information that we can put out there, that I'm putting out there, and like I said, the acronyms for I Have a Dream Too is I had to. Just ask me. And having that to be able to say, I had to change what I needed to do because I want to dream. And this is what you have done. You're realizing your dream. You found your purpose on this earth, and it's able to bring back and to give to others. Go ahead.
In the world right now that I've noticed being a victim as well as an abuser, and then counseling people that are victims and abusers, it is so hard to break the tradition, the behaviors that they have grew up in.
Yes. Yes.
It is so hard for a victim to say, I'm a victim due to my household.
Yes.
It is so hard for the abuser to identify and say, I'm a victim because of my household, because of my environment, because of what I saw, because of what was displayed to me as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And having to work with them to reprogram the amygdala to see that this is really abuse. Do you know at the end of the day how shocking that is?
Yes.
How scary that is for a victim or an abuser to face something like that?
Yes. And you know what? You said something that was so valuable, that when you talk about breaking down tradition, okay, culture, it's in the culture of abuse. This is how we do that. And Dr. Ferguson, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about that tradition, that culture, and how that dictates one family, one generation to the next.
Right. So I think we all have cultural norms, right? We all have things about our families that we do, right? So if there's a holiday where the entire family gets together, and every family has their idiosyncrasies. We certainly do see, though, there's like the internal culture of a family, the nuclear culture of a family, and then we have our extended family, which is where we go into our cousins and uncles, and then we get a little bit bigger into our community, where we're talking about our church, and then we have more global, which is how we kind of identify in this world view and things of that nature. A lot of those areas, a lot of those spheres contribute to the gaps that we have as far as addressing domestic violence. So as it passes down from generation to generation, we spoke about the trauma reenactment. We understand how that works, you know, and it's really hard to rescript, and it's really hard to know that there's a different type of love, right? Because a lot of times, what else do we see? We have our family, we have social media and TV. So, you know, back when I was growing up, I had my family, and then I didn't have the internet, so I had the Cosbys. And so if I didn't live like the Cosbys, I just said, that's just TV, and that's not me. I can't connect with that. That's miracle work over there. That's not my reality. So we don't know that there are other people that are growing up in similar neighborhoods that do have a different system of love. So a lot of it comes down to lack of exposure. So when we discuss the different ways, we need to have people that can talk to previous survivors. We need people that talk to previous abusers and say, look, this isn't how you always have to handle. There is a different way to handle this situation. So we just need to increase our exposure, again, our counseling, and we need cultural shifts that go away from, okay, we can hurt our kids. Because I think that's really where it starts, and people miss that gap a lot, and don't see how corporal punishment, I mean, we could be here for a whole nother talk show, so I won't go there, but that system of saying that this is acceptable, it's okay to hurt our children physically, okay, excessively, irrationally, right? There's the difference between discipline and abuse. And so there's a fine line, and we can go into more detail about that in a different sector, but we really have to pay attention to, are we on that fine line? Have we crossed that fine line? And when we have, what does that say? What is that exposure doing to our children? What is that doing to our families? And of course, then what is it doing to our community?
So we're going to hold that note, and we'll be back. We're going to break right now. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Welcome to Formula Auto Wash, where every day is a great day for a car wash. Open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. till 5:30 p.m. Sundays 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. Detailing packages for every budget, starting out at $29.99. 100% hand wash and detail centre. Hog's hair and microfiber brushes and mitts. Proudly used in Ecolab Blue Coral soaps and waxes. Formula Auto Wash has served the community for over 30 years. Senior discounts all day, every day. Ladies' Day Wednesday, $3 off any wash. Early bird discount Monday through Thursday till 9:30 a.m. Check out our website, formulaautowash.com.
I am Tom Mealy for the Harrison Law Group, and I have been telling you for years that getting involved in an automobile accident is no joke. This is what we do. We're not new at this game. If you've been involved in an accident of any kind, and you go to a law firm that says you have no case, it's simple. It's because they can't do it and they don't get it. You need to call us directly at 1-800-INJURY-LAW.
For professional motorcycle transport and towing, think Kickstart Fabrications Motorcycle Towing. Proudly serving all of Long Island, we feature expert handling and 24/7 service. So send a limo for your toy with Kickstart Fabrications Motorcycle Towing. For professional motorcycle...
You know you already want a Toyota, but when you want more from your Toyota store, you want Smithtown Toyota, where every Toyota comes with Smithtown Toyota's Toyota for Life program, giving you lifetime New York State inspections, lifetime 10% discounts on all parts and service, 2 years of complimentary oil changes, 2 years of scheduled maintenance, and more, all at no cost to you, plus low clear-out deals on every Toyota in stock. Get more from your Toyota store. Hurry to Smithtown Toyota.
Welcome back to I Have a Dream 2, Empowering You, and we're on the phone with Miss Queen Afi Gaston, and we were just talking about breaking down traditional cultures and things of that nature to be able to make a shift in the trajectory, change that contact lens of what people, teens, women, children are used to or conditioned to be. So, Ms. Queen, what are some things that you can give pointers, advice, suggestions, recommendations for those who are listening and watching if they are in a domestic violence situation? One of those tags that you talked about, not necessarily physical, but verbal.
Right. Well, the pointers that I would like to give out is certainly family and friends need to not tell family, friends, and pastors, clergy staff, mental health professionals, so forth and so on. Never tell a victim to leave an abusive relationship. Whether it's a woman, a man, a teen. Never tell them to just pack up and leave the relationship, because their chances of dying goes up 75% when we do things like that.
Wow.
So we want to give the resources that victims and abusers need, which there's not a lot of resources for abusers, but certainly you can give them Queen's information if they're serious about getting help. But you want to give them the resources of trusted advocates or trusted counselors, clinicians that you know that can assist in helping victims and abusers become aware of the abuse, knowing those tags, and that this really is happening to them, because, again, I said it's very shocking for them to identify with that.
Yes.
So working with them through that process, and then at the end of the day, they make the decision whether or not they want to actually leave the relationship. So then they move into devising a plan. Don't tell the victim to leave and let us devise a plan. That's inappropriate. That's getting a lot of victims killed right now.
Wow. Okay. And you said 75% chance of...
5% chance.
Wow. That's really high. Dr. Farquharson, what can you say?
I just want to echo, I mean, I appreciate you, Queen, sharing that statistic. It makes sense to me that, you know, and this is where, again, we get into people just telling them what they would do or what they think they would do. Oh, you leave.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily realistic. That's not always reasonable. And of course, given what she's saying, not always the safest decision.
Absolutely.
But to empower them to make the decision that suits them best is probably the angle that I would go. Of course, again, I'm going to go back to the counseling again.
Yes.
And I'm going to give my email address, and that's farguson.psychological@gmail.com. Quickly spelled is F as in Frank, ARQUHARSON .psychological, PSYCHOLOGICAL, and that's at gmail.com. And that's for people that are on Long Island. That's for anybody in the world that may be watching this. You know, although I may not be able to provide direct counseling for you, I'd love to connect with you and get the counsel that is for you. I'm not going to say that I'm the best counselor in the world, because I'm not, but I'm certainly can be the best therapist for someone. And if not, I can find the best therapist for you, because a lot of times it's not about what I say or how much theory I throw at you or what kind of intelligence I may have or my IQ. It really has to do with the relationship. And so I say that to say, if you do try counseling and it doesn't work for you, that's okay. That could just mean, and it's a high percentage that it could just mean it's just the wrong person at the wrong time.
Right.
And so there's many different therapists with many different approaches, and you really just got to kind of go out there and look and find the person that you connect with. So, give it 3, 4, 5 chances before you say that counseling doesn't work. That's very, very important. And again, I can ask you the right questions and get the information and work with you to find the right therapist. And of course, I would like to be able to say that I can help you. But if it doesn't work with me, it'll certainly work for someone else.
That's wonderful. And also, Queen, where can they reach you again? You're down in D.C., and so Washington, D.C. And so the phone number that they can contact you at is area code 202.
821-8933. And let me just say this, that I have clients right now in New York. So the place that I'm in does not stop me from helping people all over the world.
Yes. Just get the help. Doesn't matter where you get it from, just get it. Reach out and touch someone that has some experience, who is there to empower you and be able to help you find your purpose. Because like you said, you didn't have a purpose while you were in that relationship, that abusive relationship. So this is what it's about. And again, I Have a Dream Too, Empowering You, is here every Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. And you can tune in to madhousetv.com and you can look at the show live. And if you missed the show, and you missed any show from October 1st, you can also still go to madhousetv.com and see all previous shows. And so we want to be able to say thank you, Miss Queen, for coming on. I know we had some technical issues, but you know what? We still had a very powerful and sensitive conversation. We hope that we have been able to empower someone out there to be able to reach out and touch. So I just want to close off by saying, you know what? Remember, you were put on this earth to achieve your greatest self, to live out your purpose, and to do it courageously, because you have a dream too. And it's about, I had to, just ask me. I had to, just ask me to get out of that situation. I had to, because I have a dream too. So, Dr. Ferguson, I want to thank you for coming on and giving your clinical perspective on this. And you can reach him at
FergusonPsychological@gmail.com.
There you go. And you can reach out to him as well and send that email right on in, and he will be able to touch bases with you and kind of be able to steer you in the right direction if he's not able to help you. And although located here on Long Island, New York, again, it's another connection for somebody to be able to reach out and touch and say, you know what, after all of this, I have a dream too, and I want to be able to get out of that relationship and not be an abuser or a victim anymore. I want to be a survivor, and I want to be able to say that I have a dream because I'm redefining my purpose, my place, and my possibilities. And again, we'll see you next Wednesday from 6 to 7. And again, this has been such a powerful show, and I'm thankful to all my guests to come forth and share their experience, their story, their challenges, and their obstacles. And this has been an awesome show. Great.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, and everyone have a great evening tonight. And again, you can tune in to madhousetv.com and see the show, the recorded show, anytime, anywhere on your cell phone, laptop, computer. Thank you. It's been great.